Agnieszka Dobrzyn, director of the Nancy Institute of Experimental Biology, Professor Daniel Gryko, director of the Institute of Organic Chemistry,
Hello, is there anyone? The video is muted, I think.
let us relax with music and enjoy the piece of very good music today after the meetings. So thank you, and I will pass leadership to Professor Kowalewska.
Ja poproszę Państwa z działu IT o puszczenie filmu naszego. There will be a short clip about our institute to be played now. I hope it will work. I think we've got some technical issues.
oraz różnicowania i klasyfikacji nowotworów.
Medycyna stale się rozwija. Poszukiwane są opcje terapeutyczne dla pacjentów, co jest szczególnie ważne dla pacjentów onkologicznych, którzy są poza możliwością leczenia standardowego. Pacjenci mogą wziąć udział w badaniach klinicznych, tych, które są prowadzone w oddziale badań wczesnych faz. Prowadzimy badania kliniczne z lekami modyfikującymi układ immunologiczny oraz lekami ukierunkowanymi na cel molekularny znajdujący się w komórce nowotworowej. Diagnostyka molekularna prowadzona jest w Centrum Doskonałości Onkologii Precyzyjnej, ściśle współpracującym z oddziałem badań wczesnych faz, z klinikami narządowymi Instytutu oraz innymi ośrodkami w kraju.
Duża liczba chorych, których leczymy w Instytucie, umożliwia prowadzenie badań klinicznych nad nowymi terapiami. Ludzki organizm jest skomplikowany. W związku z tym, aby ocenić skuteczność i efektywność nowych leków, konieczne jest przeprowadzenie badań klinicznych w dużych populacjach. Narodowy Instytut Onkologii w Warszawie prowadzi około 500 badań klinicznych każdego roku.
W ostatnich czasach dokonał się olbrzymi postęp w leczeniu onkologicznym. W tej chwili traktujemy każdego naszego pacjenta bardzo indywidualnie. Ta indywidualizacja polega głównie na tym, że opieramy się na wynikach bardzo skomplikowanych badań molekularnych i genetycznych przy wyborze leczenia. W naszym instytucie codziennie mamy możliwość współpracy ze specjalistami najwyższej klasy z zakresu biologii molekularnej, z zakresu patologii czy genetyki. To daje nam możliwość dostosowania terapii do wyników badań molekularnych.
W Narodowym Instytucie Onkologii pracuje wielu znakomitych specjalistów z różnych dziedzin. Dzięki temu dostęp do wiedzy jest naprawdę szeroki. Potrafimy dobrać najwłaściwszą terapię, taką, która daje największe szanse na wyleczenie.
Nasza działalność zaczyna się w laboratorium, a kończy się przy łóżku chorego znalezieniem rozwiązania dla problemu zdrowotnego tego pacjenta.
Okay, so now it's time for the inaugural lecture.
Chcesz, żeby twoje dziecko mówiło płynnie po angielsku, zwiększyło zasób słownictwa i zyskało pewność siebie?
Of course, it's an integral part of each inauguration, and this year it is going to be Dr. Fiona Campbell, who will give the lecture. Fiona Campbell specializes in population health, and my personal impression is that it is scientific inquiry is the thing that interests most Dr. Fiona, especially of course, in research, just because it's a part of research that relates to the questions that may be asked by scientists, answered by the scientists that work in different fields and ask different questions. And Fiona will give us a lecture concerning evidence in science.
While we get the slides up and running, can I just say dzień dobry? And I'm afraid that is the only Polish that I am going to be able to say. But my huge thanks for the very kind invitation. Thank you. On here. From Professor Koszarowskiego And it's a real joy. I've been thoroughly spoilt. It feels an incredible honor. And this whole weekend, I have been shown Warsaw and fed beautiful food, and it has been a joy. A joy as well to meet colleagues here that I'm working with on the EviMap project. And most of our meetings, we meet pretty much weekly, are online. So there is just something lovely about being able to be together, meet each other face to face, and be able to have more conversations. So it's a real privilege to be here, and thank you for having me. So I've entitled this lecture rather cryptically, Evidence, Shaping or Shaped. And from that introduction, I've already seen what a commitment there here in this institute to shaping the world for the better through research. But what I'm going to also be introducing in this lecture is the idea that actually that's quite a fragile thing, and good research, in fact, can be distorted, can be heavily biased, and we have to be very alert to that. And in fact, research evidence can be shaped by the world rather than research shaping the world for the better. As mentioned, I'm based at Newcastle University, which is a university in the north of the country, north of England, just a little bit south of Scotland. And it's a beautiful city right on the banks of a large river, the River Tyne. But for many of you, you possibly are more familiar with the football Newcastle United, which, in fact, the stadium I can see from my office window. Today, I'm going to also be talking a little bit about the project that some of my colleagues here and I are working on. I'm going to be talking a little bit about evidence synthesis. But today is about you. It's about those of you who are embarking upon your PhD. It is the inaugural lecture. And so I want to spend some time thinking actually about you. I don't know, for those of you who are about to embark on your PhD, if you've wondered what the purpose of it is. I'm assuming that you all want to get a PhD. But I wonder if you've thought any more about it and what the purpose of it is for your journey, for your personal journey. And I came across this idea quite recently and I quite liked it. And it's the idea that higher education has the purpose of making us critical beings, of developing something that Barnett calls criticality. And he argues that it has three components to it. It has a component of critical thinking, to engage with ideas, to be reading, but to be reading critically, to be asking questions, to not accept things at face value, but constantly be asking questions. But it also combines with critical self-reflection, the ability to look at yourself, to look at your own biases, to think about the things that you bring and how you're interacting with your critical thinking. And then finally, it combines with critical action, engaging with action, that critical thinking, the critical self-reflection should actually go on to lead to critical action. And that this is the purpose of higher education and hopefully part of your journey as you undergo your PhD, that you will be developing criticality. And in this lecture today, I'm going to be introducing you to three people who I think have demonstrated criticality, and in so doing are improving the world for the better. The first of those is somebody that many of you, just give me a wave, you've heard of Archie Cochrane? Anybody heard of Archie Cochrane? A few of you. Yeah, okay. Archie Cochrane was a Scottish doctor. He was a physiologist. He was born in 1908. And he was very questioning and critical of medical practice. And he said that actually only sort of between 10 and 15% of medical interventions were proven to be effective. And in fact, he often argued that actually doctors were very bad for your health, because quite often doctors would prescribe treatments not only that were of unknown benefit, but actually could be harmful. And sometimes the motivations for that were very positive. They wanted to help, but just the treatments were not tested. And he wrote a book, which, in fact, I have a copy of it here. And you can see how small this book is. And this book has profoundly changed the way that we look at research, but also the way that we make decisions in healthcare and the way that governments make decisions about the healthcare that they will fund. One of the things that Archie Cochrane was very critical of was of his own profession. It is surely a great criticism of our profession that we have not organised a critical summary by specialty or subspecialty adapted periodically of all relevant randomised controlled trials. And it may seem odd to our ears now, but at that time, actually the whole notion of testing and using scientific methodology, i.e. randomised controlled trial, to look at treatments that people might just perceive are good, but without testing them, was actually groundbreaking. I know from the introduction that many of you here will be very familiar with a randomized controlled trial, but for those of you who are not, it is a study designed, which is the best type of study design for assessing treatment effectiveness, because the outcomes that you can see, you can attribute because of the process of randomization. So this was the study design that he said we need to be much more actively using this study design to treat treatments. And that work was actually very groundbreaking because it led to the establishment of the Cochrane collaboration. Has anybody heard of the Cochrane collaboration? A few of you? Okay. And the Cochrane collaboration really pioneered the idea that we take randomized controlled trials and we synthesize them. And they created an online library. It's freely available. A database of published systematic reviews of top quality evidence to guide decision making in healthcare. I just wanted to mention this hierarchy of scientific evidence. This is something that we've been wrestling a lot with within our project, but it's looking at what are the most effective designs when you're looking at treatments of effectiveness. Does something work or not? And right at the top of that pyramid is systematic reviews, meta-analysis, the meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. And you can see that randomized controlled trials, so they're considered actually the best. They're not always possible and they're not always appropriate. But when you're asking questions of effectiveness, Archie Cochrane argued that we really needed to be developing a program of trialing and of meta-analysis, synthesis of these types of study design. In contrast, not scientific evidence, YouTube videos, your mother's friend, gut feeling, personal anecdotes, the media, social media, and even potentially your professor's views. Up until this time, I don't know if many of you have heard of the GOBSAT method of making decisions, and this is the way that many clinical decisions were made. These were the ways that guidelines were informed. The GOBSAT method, good old boys sort of sat around a table, and this had been for many years the way that many decisions in clinical care were made. But what this movement that was really triggered by the publication of this little book, I'm sorry, was a movement from eminence-based practice, eminence being the experts round the table, to something called evidence-based practice. And this is where research has become so important in informing care. So I mentioned systematic reviews, and sorry, I'm just going to go back a stage. And it's a rather, it's a very rigorous process where we start off with a protocol. So we publish a protocol so that we say what we're going to do. And then we undertake very rigorous searching to locate the evidence before that's synthesized. Now, I've just got the logo here for the Cochrane collaboration. And I just want to introduce the idea of a simplified meta-analysis for those of you for whom meta-analysis is a new concept. It's a visual of the pooling together of different study designs. So here we have the line of no difference. Each of these studies is a study result, and the line, the horizontal line indicates the confidence interval, the uncertainty around the finding. Here is the summary statistic. So many of you will have seen forest plots, these meta-analysis results, and it should be labeled which side favors control, which side favors treatment. Now, this is at the center of the Cochrane collaboration logo, as you'll have just seen. And in fact, this was a simplified visual of one of the first meta-analyses that they undertook, which was to look at the treatment, the use of corticosteroids for women who are at risk of preterm birth. And in fact, the use of steroids to treat women at risk of preterm birth was very slow to be taken up in the medical community. And it wasn't until this meta-analysis was performed that showed that actually they were effective, that it led to the uptake of this type of treatment and saved many thousands of babies' lives. And I just wanted to show you this because this is actually, this was the simplified version. This is what they look like in reality with much more information, but you can see on the left-hand side, the author of the study, the data. On the right-hand side, we have risk of bias, and I'm going to come on to that in a minute. But this is just an updated version of that meta-analysis with new studies that have been published since that original study, but still with an overall effectiveness summary score. One of the things that we undertake when we're doing a synthesis of these studies is a very critical look at the quality of the trials. And I love this paper by Peter Uni because it really illustrates why it's an empirical study that shows why some of the things that we think are important when we're designing a trial actually matter. Now, don't worry too much about the figures here. But what they did, this is a meta-epidemiological study, and they were looking at, so randomization has two stages, the generalization of the allocation process, the concealment of allocation. And you can see that the distance, in fact, in this meta-analysis from the center line is an indication of how far these results are distorted in the absence of using randomization. So they were able to empirically show that when a randomized control trial, and importantly, doesn't have concealment of allocation, the results are likely to be heavily biased. Likewise, in the absence of blinding. So there's empirical evidence that if we are including in our synthesis of studies randomized controlled trials that fail to adequately randomize, that fail to use blinding, we're likely to be looking at distorted results. And this is one of the ways that we then deal with that. This is just another meta-analysis. So we can group studies based on our analysis of the risk of bias, so low risk of bias. And you can see just from this that those that are at high risk of bias overinflate the effectiveness of the intervention. So this is something that we build into our meta-analysis when we're undertaking a very close look at study quality and the risk of bias. I just took this clip out of recent guidance from the Royal College of Obstetrician and Gynecology recommending the use of corticosteroids, and you can see where it says evidence quality, it's got three stars, it's considered A, and that's because this evidence is based on a systematic review, including a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials that have been rigorously evaluated. So this is how you can see how this type of research is fed through to informing clinical decisions at the bedside. I'm not sure if you've heard of the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence in the UK, but this is an indication of how this evidence-based practice movement has gone on to influence not just scientists and clinicians, but also policy. So this organisation was set up in the UK and it evaluates, so the pharmaceutical companies will present a new medicine, a new drug, a new device, and there will be a process of evaluation of systematic reviews and economic analysis. And then there will be a very transparent decision made. And if you go onto the NICE website, you can look for the systematic reviews that have informed the clinical decisions. And there was a lovely story I read recently about not long after NICE had been set up, and the chairman of Glaxo Wellcome had designed a new drug, Relenska, I think it was called anyway. And they were really optimistic about the drug. It was a treatment for flu. And so they submitted it. They were anticipating that the NHS would fund it. And NICE looked into it. And they decided that, in fact, this was not a cost-effective treatment. It had limited effectiveness and it was going to be very expensive. It was going to take a large portion of the NHS budget. So NICE recommended that it was not licensed for use in the UK. The chairman of Glaxo Wellcome went to the Prime Minister and knocked on the door because he could do that because he was the chairman of Glaxo Wellcome, and he threatened to remove Glaxo welcomes business from the UK. But at that time, to Tony Blair's government, and they said, no, we're going to support NICE's decision. And in fact, it was not funded, and Glaxo Wellcome didn't leave. But this indicates the type of influence that this evidence synthesis can have on decision making. And you have also a health technology assessment unit in Poland. So I don't know, I didn't look at the website, but hopefully there you also have transparent decision making processes and evidence synthesis. And it isn't only in healthcare. We are seeing this approach to evidence informing policy making across all sectors. The Youth Endowment Fund, an organisation committed to looking and supporting young people. I'm an editor of the Campbell Collaboration, and we look at evidence to support decisions across a wide range, including social care, criminal justice system, and education. So looking at how we use evidence to inform policy. And if you think randomised control trials are poor in healthcare, they're even worse in social care. Next, I want to tell you a little bit about another person who I think has demonstrated criticality. This is a colleague of ours involved with our project, very familiar to us, Dr. Isia Indave. And she was based at the International Agency of Research on Cancer, the IARC Institute, that I imagine a lot of you here are familiar with, WHO, in Lyon. And they are responsible for producing these globally recognized, highly important blue books. They're available online, and they really underpin and inform tumor classification worldwide. And Isia was working there, and one day I got an email from her, Fiona, can I have a talk to you about evidence? We had a conversation, and she said, really, in pathology, they've been very slow at taking up evidence-based practice, and they're using the GOBSAT method. They really have not looked at the hierarchy of evidence. And although they are drawing on evidence, actually it's more informed by experts. And I think we need to change this. She had very good networks, including my colleagues here. And together, an international group of us got together and we started thinking, how can we address this problem? What is the thing that we can do? And how can we use methods of evidence synthesis? Now, don't worry that you can't see the detail of this. Evidence synthesis methodology has evolved considerably. We don't just do meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. We have a whole range of different approaches that we can use because sometimes randomized controlled trials either aren't available or not possible. One of the things that we are doing with this particular project is creating interactive maps. Now, obviously, this is just a slide, but on it, we are going to map all of the existing evidence, and we're going to be classifying the type of design. Now, what this type of map allows you to do is it allows you to see where there are gaps. Where is there no existing evidence? Where do we need to think about our priorities for future research? Is there a need for a systematic review in that area? They're interactive, so they allow you to click on the dots and you can go and get more information from it. Now, with this particular map, this is one of our early demonstrations, and so, so we developed some prototypes to see if they would be working. But the colours of the dots represent the quality of the evidence. So again, you can look at the map and you can see, okay, we might have a lot of evidence, but the only evidence we have is very poor quality. So again, a very important tool to be informing both caution around interpretation, but also in terms of informing future research. And like I say, they're interactive, so you can go directly to the paper. I just wanted to show you this because, again, our work is still very preliminary. And under cited evidence, you can see the evidence. This is just in one of the tumour types, and it's showing you that actually the higher quality evidence, level evidence 1 to 3, is about just under 50% cited in the blue books. But lower level evidence, you can see the proportion there. But when you look at the available evidence, there is a lot of high quality evidence that's not yet cited in the blue books. And so what we're hoping to do by creating these maps is supporting the editors as they work on these blue books to know where is the high quality evidence and what evidence is needed. So far, I think I have described utopia. This was Thomas More's vision of utopia where there were no lawyers. I've described what I think sounds like a perfect world, where you have a problem, you do some research, and it changes things for the better. And we know that that is not the way it always happens. I don't know about in Poland, but I know globally, certainly in the UK, we have a disease, measles, that is on the increase. And this is a disease that could be eradicated through immunization. And yet we are seeing increasing numbers of children develop measles. I worked for a short time in Africa. Every child I cared for with measles died. It's easy to forget how serious measles is. I don't know if any of you ever read this paper, but this was a paper that was published in The Lancet. So if you think that only good evidence comes from good journals, think again. And it was a paper that was describing, it was a case study, and it was describing an association between MMR and autism. The impact of this paper has been profound because it has created a lot of uncertainty around the use and uptake of the MMR vaccine. In fact, this paper had more authors than it did subjects in it. And they made a fundamental error, which was they made a causal relationship where this was just a case study. And in fact, later on, there was also shown to be, Andy Wakefield was also shown to have very vested interests in the type of associations that he was showing. So the paper has been retracted, but the damage was done. This is one of the most cited retracted papers that there are. I want to talk to you about the third person who I think exemplifies criticality. Professor Jennifer Byrne. She's a molecular biologist based in Australia, and some of you may know her because her field is cancer oncology. And she was, she does a lot of DNA sequencing, and she became aware that she was looking at studies that she thought, these can't be right, the images were wrong. She noticed text that was the same in other she'd seen in other papers. And so she started to look very critically, and she started to see what she thinks was fraudulent data being reported. And in fact, her work has led to a large number of papers being retracted. And she argues that actually we have seen there is such a pressure on academics, and for you as scientists, as new scientists, you will know that publications are used as one of the metrics around promotion. There is a huge pressure for academics to publish. So there will be pressure on you to publish. At the same time, we don't have lots of growing funds to support research. What does that mean? An exponential growth in publication, declining or static research funding, potentially reduced quality. The pressure to publish, but not the money to support good research. And you can see why we could have a problem. So for researchers to be rewarded for increased numbers of publication, the intended effect might be improved research productivity, provide means of evaluating performance. But the reality is that we actually get substandard incremental papers, poor methods, and increase in false discovery rates, reduced quality of peer review. And I think this is a trend that's been happening for about 50 years or so, but it certainly will impact you. One of the things that she did, and this was her critical action, was she has created a tool where it is able to detect where there is fraudulent data in the sequencing. Some of you who are involved in this type of area of science might be interested in looking at, and I've got a link to it there. So she went from thinking critically to reflecting critically to critical action and has developed a tool. In the same way, ISIA thought critically, and the action was a research grant that led to a large Horizon funded project that we're all working on. I just want to talk about a final story. And this was a piece of work that actually I was involved with at my last institution, Sheffield University. Now, one of our biggest public health problems in the UK, and I imagine that you have similar issues here in Poland, is the harmful effects of excessive alcohol use. It's one of our biggest public health problems in the UK. And I think it's estimated about 5,000 deaths per year could be prevented if we reduced excessive alcohol use. Sorry. One of the interventions that we looked at Sheffield was something called minimum unit pricing. And this was a policy intervention. So it's not like an intervention where you go and suggest to your doctor sees a patient and they see they are drinking too much and they recommend they drink a bit less, or a tablet. This was a policy intervention. And we did a lot of evidence synthesis to look to see, might this work? What would be the costs of it? What would be the cost of the economy? And we also did some modeling to look to see what might be the implications for this. And it was shown to be, we predicted it would be a highly effective intervention. Not only would it be likely to reduce harmful drinking, but it would be likely to be an intervention that would reduce health inequalities, because it would increase the price of very, very cheap strong alcohol. So actually, where often interventions tend to increase health inequalities, this was an intervention that was shown to be likely to actually improve health across all socioeconomic groups. So the Chief Medical Officer in 2009 said, research provides strong evidence for a clear and effective way in which the government can act. Consideration should be given to setting the minimum price per unit at 50p. So the evidence was there. There was support from the Chief Medical Officer. But the government also got behind it as well. The Health Select Committee backed it in 2009, 2012. The UK government committed to minimum unit pricing as a policy. David Cameron stating, minimum unit prices targets the cheapest products and helps those reduce drinking and those who drink the most, but did recognise that it would not necessarily be a popular policy, but nevertheless an important one. But suddenly, at the 11th hour, there was an extraordinary U-turn in government policy. Sorry, I don't know why it's jumping. And it was announced just before the Parliament went on their summer recess. We do not yet have enough concrete evidence that its introduction would be effective in reducing harms. And this is a crucial point, without penalising people who drink responsibly. We are not in the business of making laws that do not work. So that was Jeremy Brown just announcing, just as they were about to bring it into law, that there was a huge U-turn. And the evidence, which had been considered strong, was considered not enough. What on earth happened? Well, some work was done by, in fact, an investigative journalist, and it was published in the British Medical Journal. And it looked to see why on earth there had been this change. So even though there was good evidence, it was not allowed to shape government policy. What had happened is that the alcohol industry had been very bothered by this policy, and they had worked very, very, very hard to influence government. So they would have frequent meetings with ministers. They would make sure they were on committees to decide how these things, what action should be taken. They had extensive contact with government ministers. They would name a beer after the Chancellor of the Exchequer and so on. So the influence was very, very strong from the alcohol industry. But they also did something else, because they recognized that it wasn't possibly enough to simply go and name a beer after the Chancellor of the Exchequer, have lots of meetings, take them out for dinner. It wasn't enough. They also needed to, when it was the voice of scientific evidence, they needed to produce scientific evidence. So they started to undermine the science that we had produced at Sheffield. So counter documents and reports were published that were sent to government. So for ministers who are looking at the evidence from the university, but they also have evidence from these other institutions, What do they believe? And so the safest thing is the evidence is too mixed. We cannot make a decision. And this is what partially influenced this huge U-turn we saw, despite the production of good and solid evidence. There's a fascinating book that was written by Naomi Orsk and Eric Conway, and it looked at how scientists with a political ideology produce pseudoscience. So some of this science would, scientists were, for example, funded by the tobacco industry, not only critiquing good science, but producing pseudoscience. And this book, I think, is a lovely title, Merchants of Doubt. And this is exactly what we saw in the UK. Suddenly, alongside our evidence was other evidence that was being produced and funded by the alcohol industry. And all of it created in order to cast doubt over the certainty of the evidence. And of course, the implications were very enormous for public health, because in England, we did not implement this policy. Now in Scotland, they have. And so we are gathering data to look to see whether, in fact, we are seeing changes. And indeed, we are. A reduction in harmful alcohol drinking consumption in Scotland, but not in England. And it's not only in this area too. Here's another review that was looked at systematic reviews. Remember, systematic reviews at the top of our hierarchy. And it showed that those that were funded by industry were much more likely to find favourable outcomes than those that were looked at by non-industry funded groups. There's another study that's looked at reviews that were looking at the harmful effects of alcohol on cardiovascular disease. Those reviews by authors with prior industry funding all report alcohol protective effects. John Iondes wrote this lovely paper, The Mass Production of Redundant, Misleading and Conflicted Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. And I think this is very alarming for us as scientists, isn't it? That actually out there competing alongside strong science is an awful lot of poor, heavily biased, erroneous science. In fact, they argue that only 3% of systematic reviews were considered decent and clinically useful. So where does that take us? I've shown you a picture where evidence, research evidence, can powerfully improve the world. It can shape the way we deliver care, it can shape the care that's given, and it can shape policy. But I've also shown that actually we are in a heavily contested field where there'll be other very powerful interests trying to influence the scientific arena. But it's not just those influences. There'll be influences for you to be biased in order to get the publications. And this is where criticality is so important. To think critically about what you're reading, to reflect on the biases that you bring and the pressures that are upon you, and to be bold and take that critical thinking into critical action. And I think these are some of the answers to addressing some of those dangerous ways that research evidence can actually be shaped and be harmful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Are there any questions to Dr. Campbell from the audience? Okay, thank you very much.
If anybody would like a copy of Archie Cochrane's book, can you let Magda know and I will send you one.
Thank you very much. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you another important person of today's meeting. It's Amir Kumar Patel. He's a PhD student. He works at the Institute of Physical Chemistry of Polish Academy of Science. And he's been recently chosen to be a president of Warsaw for PhD also for PhD Council, and he will give you a brief introduction to the council and to the school itself. So,
thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. Am I audible? Hello, everyone. Dzień dobry. Today we have gathered here on the threshold of new academic year. So it's important to all of you to reflect on the significance that we have chosen, the path we have chosen. So I know all of you have come from different backgrounds, different cities, and countries. And some of you are from same cities. But today you are going to be part of Warsaw PhD School. I think it's very impolite of me, but I have a request to all of you. I would like to ask you to talk people as much as you can, whether it's your supervisor or fellow PhD students or anyone else around here. And I would say, please do your best to rely on people you meet here. So whatever I'm saying, these are not empty words. I'm talking from my past experiences. You know, I come from India, a country which is vastly different in culture from Poland. I have been here for around 1 year, 14 months. And today I'm standing in front of you and giving this speech as a president of Warsaw PhD School. Yeah. You know, I'm the one who had no knowledge of local language, a culture, but proudly I can say I'm a representation of how helpful and supportive everyone around me has been. And I sincerely hope that all of you will have the same experience that I have. Now, as a part of Warsaw PhD Student Council, I would like to shed some lights on the role of PhD Council. We actually help you in all kind of personal issues, and I make sure that it's all anonymous. And we also help you in financial struggles. We organize different kind of events, and we are planning to organize conference in Warsaw PhD School, where all PhD scholars from all institutes will participate. I don't want to go deep into details, and if you want to know more information, you can visit Warsaw PhD School website. And I don't want to bore you any further than this. I would like to wrap up my speech here. And I would like to wish you good luck and thank you for being part of scientific community. And we have a nice video prepared for you, and where our respected professors and some your senior fellow PhD student have shared their experience about science and research and PhD life at Warsaw PhD School. I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Could you play?
Teraz bym poprosiła o uruchomienie naszego filmu. Mam nadzieję, że tym razem nie będzie kłopotów z dźwiękiem.
Warsaw for PhD is a cooperation of 9 different institutes working in natural science and biomedical science. It gathered together physicists, chemists, biologists, medical doctors. We welcome people with very different backgrounds, which have mastered in different fields.
Only the synergy between all the disciplines can lead to new exciting discovery, which can solve the problems that modern society faces.
PhD studies last 4 years. Every PhD student is getting a financial support.
Our school is very international. Students come from all over the world. You will be supported in all legal and administrative matters related to your settling down in Poland. You will be able to focus on research.
They have modern technology here. The working culture is really good. If you want to work and you at the same time want to enjoy your social life, I would say that you should come here.
You can discover a lot. You can be participating in enhancing the knowledge of entire world.
Without the PhD students, the science is dying. We need the PhD students. They are very welcome.
I really like to be challenged by some problems where you can think and then you can find your solution.
I'm trying to reveal the function of genes that were not yet characterized. I hope that the results will be very promising and in the future they will lead to very important discoveries.
Medical discipline is a hard field, but it's a work of effort and in the end it gives a lot of satisfaction.
We offer very well-equipped laboratories and also networking and collaboration opportunities because we collaborate with top research centers in the world.
To be a PhD student, to finish your PhD, you really have to be engaged. You have to know that this is a 4-year engagement. This is a long journey, which at the end will be finalized with the discoveries, PhD thesis publication.
I encourage you to try PhD studies. Maybe you will find out that this was your path.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like Amit Kumar to come up again to the floor because it's an important part of our today's celebration. And we would like to ask all the PhD students, the new ones, to stand up. And those who are online, and those students that are online, to be in kind of uplifted mood. So in a minute, we will ask you to pronounce the words of the PhD school oath. And it's not at the page. And we will read the words of the oath, line by line, and we will ask you to repeat after us loudly. And please remember that you have to say your name out loud at the very beginning, your name. So after we will read it, the lines of the oath, line by line. Are you ready? Okay, so I vow to solemnly strive to acquire knowledge and develop my own skills, the laws and customs of the scientific world, and take care of the dignity and honor of PhD students at the Warsaw Doctorate School of Biomedical Science. And then and congratulations to you all for joining our school. And we wish you all good luck. And as a word from myself, I would like you to never forget that science is fun too. Yeah, so thank you, Amit. Thank you again. And now it's the time for our mini concert. And I would like to invite the scholars of the Polish Children's Fund. Our institute has a long history of cooperation with the Children's Fund, and we would like to welcome you all. It's a chamber of Philharmonic of the Polish National Fund, and they will be playing music of Karl Stamitz, it's the 18th century composer. And I would like to invite the clarinet quartet for today. And I would like to invite Agnieszka Natanek, she'll be playing clarinet, Michał Skibiński, violin, Dobrawa Baszczak, alto, and Mrs. Zuzanna Augustyniak, who will be playing cello. And I'm sure you will all enjoy it. I'm sure they're coming. They were all getting prepared in our rooms, so I'm sure they should be ready. And by the way, you all should have the programs of the mini concerts, so we can get acquainted. So they're coming in a minute. But maybe in the meantime, I should inform you that afterwards you will be all welcome for the refreshments downstairs at the ground floor. And we will invite all the members of the board of directors and board of the program members to come to the room number 1, which is also downstairs for their own meeting. Okay, ready? Thank you very much. We've enjoyed your music very much. Proszę nas nie opuszczać jeszcze. Chcieliśmy serdecznie podziękować za czas poświęcony dla naszej uroczystości. Would like to thank the supervisor of the team, Paulina Książek. Kwiaty. Okay, thank you very much. Dziękujemy bardzo. And Michał Skipiński. Dziękujemy bardzo. Dobrawa Baszczak. Bardzo dziękuję. Dziękuję bardzo. And last but not least, Zuzanna Augustyniak. And one more girl, Agnieszka Natanek. Gratulacje, bardzo, bardzo dziękujemy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed the music, and I would like to ask Professor Fiona Campbell to come up to say it does not have nothing to do with music, but I would like to thank her for coming and giving a nice lecture. So this brings us to the end of our ceremony. So I would like to invite you all for the refreshments, which are at the ground floor, at the ground floor, and the members of the board of directors and board of the program board are welcome to come down to the room number 1 for your meeting. And thank you very much for coming. No dobra. I will send it to you. I'm going to send it to you quickly, so I'll send you both a copy. It's quite easy to read. Everything that comes over